One is Ross trying to get at, if this cancel culture thing is really a female phenomenon.
Okay.
Or if there's been other examples in history where, like, before the feminization of the workplace, you might see cancel culture.
Yeah, like the witch hunts originally. I know that the witch hunts were just women canceling everybody. That's why it's called witch hunts, because the witches were canceling everybody.
The witches canceled.
So that's the original witch hunt. But were there witch hunts that were led by men as opposed to women?
Well, I mean, the witches were hunting the other witches because women like to destabilize and backbite each other.
You tear down the house, then you put up the rent. You pocket the cash, and you crush all dissent.
Welcome to the Red Diaper Pail, a podcast about art, culture, history, politics, technology, and parenting from a left perspective. My name is John Paul.
And I'm Simone.
And this is episode 9, recorded on Friday, the 14th of November. And I'm wondering what you did to celebrate Anti-Communism Week.
Oh, yeah. I saw that was a thing.
By order of the President of the United States of America, a proclamation. This week, our nation observes Anti-Communism Week, a solemn remembrance of the devastation caused by one of history's most destructive ideologies. Across continents and generations, communism has wrought devastation upon nations and souls. New voices now repeat old lies, cloaking them in the language of, quote, social justice and, quote, democratic socialism. Yet their message remains the same. Give up your freedom. Place your trust in the power of the government and trade the promise of prosperity for the empty comfort of control. America rejects this evil doctrine. We will remain a nation founded on the eternal truth that liberty and opportunity are the birthrights of every person, and that no ideology, whether foreign or domestic, can extinguish them. Now, therefore, I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution and the laws of the United States, do hereby proclaim that the week of November 2nd through November 8th, 2025, as Anti-Communism Week. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hands this 7th day of November, in the year of our Lord 2025, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 250th.
Okay.
Wait, so he made this week of the 2nd through the 8th, Anti-Communism Week, retrospectively on the 7th?
What?
He said, I hereto set my hand this 7th of November.
Oh, you mean they didn't announce it?
Yes, it was the day before the week was over.
I guess they didn't plan ahead.
No, I mean, I can understand. I can appreciate that. It's very human foible. I found myself in that position often myself.
Where you're trying to declare a week and you miss it?
Yeah. Shit. I was supposed to start this Monday, and this was in response to Mom Donnie.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah. This is reminding everyone that you cannot fall for this communism stuff.
Some of the language in it would not pass his own DEI DEI cleanup. Like,
you don't think he noticed that when he was spent all that time writing it?
It sounds like ChatGPT wrote it.
He sat by the fire for hours wordsmithing.
ChatGPT, write me a proclamation for anti-consumption. That sounds old-timey.
It sounds serious. No, stop laughing at me, ChatGPT. It has to sound serious and old-timey.
Yeah. It's, I have nothing to say about that.
Just, communists, socialists,
it's weird.
people who believe in social justice, you're all on the list.
It's weird to say ash heap of history and not trash heap of history.
Yeah, it was like the chat. They lost a couple letters there.
Into the ash heap of history.
Yeah.
It's not
ash heap? Is even an ash heap?
Well, there is an ash heap if you're burning things. But I thought it was trash heap of history.
Yeah, it is usually trash heap of history. Maybe he has a different translation of Marx's Capital. Maybe he has a different version.
It comes from trash heap of history comes from Trotsky. Reagan said it.
Oh, Reagan said it?
Oh, but Reagan said ash heap of history. He's mirroring a Ronald Reagan address where he's had Marxism and Leninism would be left on the ash heap of history.
Reagan and Trump are two people that deserve each other. All right, so to mark Anti-Communism Week, I'm doing the horrible headlines, and you are.
I have an artifact that the New York Times brings us that everyone was very mad about because it was originally titled "How Women Have Ruined the Workplace," and it made the internet ablaze.
Mm-hmm. Women have only ruined this podcast.
Yeah, women need to continue to ruin as much as possible.
Yeah, please ruin the workplace.
Yeah,
please ruin. There's still some of it left that's not been ruined. Can you keep ruining it?
I wish that was happening. Anyways, it's two conservative feminists that have a debate on Ross Douthat, or however you say his name's audio video op-ed situation he has called The Interesting Times.
Is all of the ones he does a video? Because that's not.
No, he also writes.
Okay. Because sitting there while these two women have a debate is not op-ed, but
he didn't really do a lot of moderating, did he?
No. Okay. Well, anyway, horrible headlines. It has been an absolute crazy week for news. I'm going to do a lot of these, but we should probably keep them short.
My sleep deprivation has cut down on my ability to follow the news.
Oh, you missed a lot. The big one right now is. This is a horrifying headline about Epstein and these letters that they released. So we have all these emails that the Democrats have apparently been sitting on for a long time.
Mm-hmm. They couldn't release it until they got the vote. They were held up because there was a congresswoman in Arizona they would not allowed to start her job, which is completely unconstitutional and illegal. But carry on.
My point being that they've had the ability to vote on this before that situation. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't account for them, can you?
No. I mean, they were protecting their friends like Larry Summers and
Bill Clinton
and Deepak Chopra.
Oh, not Deepak.
Yeah.
That's okay.
It's like
I think everyone, I mean,
every like mid-tier like celebrity intellectual is like implicated in this. I don't know what
especially the ones
fascination they have with this.
That were like, on Oprah in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say anything about that. So, among the things that have been discovered is this one letter which implies that Trump has at one point gave Bill Clinton the blowjob.
I thought that was, but I thought that was like metaphorical.
So
it's clearly not clear.
It's not clear, no. It's also like, it is to me pretty unseemly for this one to overshadow the like child trafficking.
Oh yeah.
Paid influence blackmail story, which is much more important and
both
much more.
Clinton and Trump can consent.
Yeah, well, for one thing. For another thing, it's like, oh, he's gay. Oh, like that's not the point. Like, who gives a shit about that? But anyway, that's the big news. So this is, I think we're watching this take down the Trump administration, or at least severely weakening what they're able to accomplish, but I guess we'll see.
I don't know why they're so scared of this, because I don't imagine his base actually caring. So I'm surprised that everyone has been so scared about hiding this, because it seems like no one really cares. I mean, it's horrifying that no one really cares, but I feel like there must be something deeper and darker that's going to come out. That just like underage girls. Not that underage girls aren't deep. That's terrible, but it doesn't seem like it's enough.
I think that what it does is it undermines. I don't think that anyone cares that he's a piece of shit and that all this is shitty.
That's his brand.
But what they need is, what they like is having some sense of righteous fury and indignation, which this will steal from them. They will not have they'll not even have this, like, in this bizarro way, have this moral high ground.
Yeah, except for, I don't think it's ever been logical or rational to claim a righteous high ground. So this to change that.
No, but you can't even irrationally claim. What was he protecting the rest of the world from these teenage girls?
There's short attention span. I think there has to be something far worse that they know is going to come out, and that's why they're panicked. And I think it either is it becoming crystal clear that Epstein was not just running underage girls, but was using this to blackmail the entire world in order to do Israel's bidding politically, geopolitically. Like, it was a Mossad agent, and it's all blackmail all the time. And that there's evidence of just like how nefarious the whole thing was and is and continues to be.
You mean for like president after president after
Yes.
president? So it's almost the system protecting itself more than him protecting himself.
Trump in particular, I think, has a lot of skeletons beyond just getting with underage girls, and maybe there's more that will come out there.
Yeah. One thing that I've been wondering about actually on that note is if the Russiagate people are going to be vindicated by this, because it seemed that Epstein may have been helping Putin manage him on behalf of Israel. So
Putin managed Trump.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that there's things related to not just being a pedophile and rapist that are in there.
And you think his base would care about that more?
I think it could be extremely destabilizing to realize that your strongman, America First guy is actually just a moron run by whoever
Foreign intelligence,
whoever can get a video of him. Or
I mean, it's like a obvious.
He can be about the whole thing.
Well, that's true. I mean, he's obviously like a scam artist, and that to me, that's the danger. Is it sort of washes this as all of this is scam stuff from the beginning and top to bottom, or it associates him with this like cabal of like pedophile power brokers that everyone intuited existed, but we're told they're crazy for thinking is, and it's all sort of documented. But I think one thing I'm wondering is if he can say, "Oh, I'm reformed, like I escaped this liberal blob of this is what they do, and I've escaped it, and now I'm trying to destroy it."
I'm sure they're going to try to workshop a bunch of different PR around it. It's not just these emails. I think that the real thing that I was listening to one of the lawyers who has been the lawyer of many of the victims for decades, and what they really want to get released is what the FBI got out of Epstein's homes.
Yeah,
when they swept it, and this guy it can't talk about it, but has seen the stuff, and it is implying that it is significantly more damning and big time news than the emails.
Yeah, I mean it's an open secret that he had cameras all over his homes, and that the FBI ran away with all these tapes, and then the next day they had no idea what happened to them. So
right, and obviously, I mean, even these idiots would be careful about what they write in an email to Epstein. Although Larry Summers apparently was not, but they might not be so careful how they behave in the house.
Indeed. I don't think they probably were very careful about what they were doing in the house.
Shouldn't defeat the purpose of their party.
I also think that, like, all of them are probably saying to themselves, this is mutually assured destruction for all of us, so it can never come out. And that's how we know it will never come out. So we're all safe to sort of act like this, which kind of makes Bill Clinton the sacrificial lamb of all this, which I think is kind of cute.
It is kind of cute.
What a note on Larry Summers, who is going to be implicated in the conversation.
Oh yeah, Larry Summers comes up in a much less torrid way.
Yeah, but
in our
also disgusting way. Like, what a fucking loser! Like, this guy has been like, this guy's bragging about like Donald Trump is lucky who his opposition is. You're the opposition, Larry. All these Democrats have been listening to you for God knows what reason. You're a dumb man. You're obviously like implicated in this to the nth degree. Like apparently, like even with his status and wealth, he can't get any attention from women. He's asking Epstein for advice. I mean, what a gross loser these people are.
Yep.
All right. So that's the short one.
The short horrible headline. Yeah. We're gonna have to cut stuff.
All right. So one thing was,
and I would say that these files were made up by Comey. They were made up by Obama. They were made up by the Biden. We went through years of that.
One headline I have here is Trump prevents the states from paying out SNAP, but that's kind of a moot point now because the bigger one is that Schumer capitulated on the shutdown. So the shutdown is now over.
Democrats love to be losers.
Yeah, they do. They can't get enough of it. No, I mean, I wrote a little piece on this. But I think the main point for people to realize is the casting them as like they wish they were fighting back, but they just can't get it together. They're too cowardly or inept or disorganized or beaten back or something, I think misses the point, which is that they have no interest in actually fighting fascism. They may not want this particular form of fascism, but their allegiance is to capital. So whenever capital requires their capitulation, they're not, oh shoot, we got beat again. It's they're doing their jobs, which is not to protect you,
right? Because the thesis of what you wrote is that the Wall Street was getting shaky, and ending the shutdown was a way to stabilize. And your argument is that that's what moved the Democrats.
Liberalism is about social control through deception, whereas fascism's social control through force. And I think that they want to maintain appearances and they want to beat back their left flank, which in this case is AOC primarying Chuck Schumer. Mm-hmm. So their main interest is safeguarding capital in their particular way, as opposed to fighting fascism. And your point about like these wealthy guys who like were on the side of Harris supposedly, I think that this season that's not actually that true, and they were perfectly happy with Trump is becoming more and more clear, and that's going to affect the Democrats' like disposition towards Trumpism, which is like our donors like it, so we're going to go in this direction.
Sure. Yeah. It's still not clear. So the shutdown's ended, but apparently it's still not clear when the actual money is going to get freed up for real people to actually begin consistently receiving their SNAP benefits across the country. I mean, the whole thing's been different state to state because different states need different federal support and different states have different willingness to help their population. But if you're looking for like information on like when will SNAP benefits be fully like back to normal, that information does not exist.
Yeah, that's tough too because now that the shutdown is over, it's going to be less about political solidarity and resistance to actually help people and more about it's over. So I guess there's no problem when all the problems that already existed are still there and are even worse because of the disruption.
Right. So in some ways, it's like it continues to be a successful way to beat up on the poor because there's not genuine interest in like making sure benefits are adequately managed, obviously. Certainly not something Chuck Schumer is worried about.
Nope.
So that's a horrible end to a horrible news story that remains horrible.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder, like, why would you bother? The Democrats are destroying any reason to support them whatsoever. Like, you know, if they just lose, like, it's almost like they're purposely destroying their own political constituency. But
one would argue that the establishment Democrats' unwillingness to take seriously, and that like Mondani's election and other more progressive people becoming very popular candidates, their unwillingness to see that as a clear direction of the party would lead me to believe that they are trying to destroy their own party. Yeah,
or at least like embolden the right wing enough that they don't have to seriously contend with like this Mondani challenge, which is that's sick.
What's your message to former President Trump tonight?
You can't always get what you want.
Senator Chuck Schumer, the senior senator from the great state of New York.
Next, something else that's sick. Tucker Carlson, a few days ago, hosted Nick Fuentes on his show. And there seems to be a coordinated effort to like normalize Nick Fuentes amongst the like macro right.
Yeah. I don't know how much this is like known by most people, but I don't feel like I'd know who Nick Fuentes is if it weren't for you.
So, yeah, I mean, if you're internet poisoned, you know him as the leader of a group of people called Groypers, which are basically like the most right-wing, like loser incels on the internet.
The frog people. And they are like explicitly white nationalist and incredibly anti-Semitic. Incredibly anti-feminist, and like these terms get thrown around a lot. So to be clear, what we're talking about, Trump and Vance are not right wing enough for him. So he called Vance a fat gay. He's used the F slur, a fat gay race traitor for having race mixer race traitor for having babies with an Indian woman, and he called her a racial slur as well. So this is the sort of stuff he peddles in. On Tucker Carlson's show, he called. No, wait, Nick Fuentes has like a YouTube show, or
yeah. He has a daily stream. He goes for hours. Goes to this.
And Tucker Carlson invited him on his show.
Yeah, people are comparing it, like Ben Shapiro, who's outraged about this because you're allowed to be as nasty as you want and do all the crime statistics you want and do all the nativism you want unless you're talking about Jews, and then it's not okay. Like he thought, I don't know why he would think that they wouldn't eventually come after Jews.
But Ben Shapiro's outraged that
He's outraged now. He's outraged that they're doing to him what they did to all these other groups, which is why are there so many Jews in banking, basically, kind of shit. So he's going around comparing this interview to the interview that he did with Ted Cruz, which is very combative and like adversarial. And this one was like very nice. Like Nick Fuentes said some crazy things. He said, well, we should come back to that. Sort of moved on and this kind of thing.
So he's trying to mainstream him.
Yeah. And the Red Scare podcast also had Nick Fuentes on, which is probably a teal-eyed outlet as well. So there's like
the major issue with the Red Scare podcast is that is the name that I wish that we had for our podcast, because that was our trivia name, our trivia team name, and these bitches took it, and they're right-wing like tealites.
Yeah.
Anyways, what did they have to say to Nick Fuentes?
I didn't listen to it. I mean, I used to listen to the Red Scare pod, and it's now such like aggravating drivel that I can't even get through it. But so
we think Nick Fuentes is going to get a position in the cabinet.
He was invited to the White House for dinner.
Oh,
and Trump but he
doesn't probably leave his basement, so that's challenging for him.
Yeah, he tends to get assaulted if he goes out public. I mean, the guy is scum. What the neat thing about Nick Fuentes though is he mixes in a real working class populism into this stuff. He's really anti-elitist, and he gets a lot of people who like he has like people will say all MAGA are stupid, and he'll be like, stupid people are like the only reason this country is still working, kind of stuff.
That's standard fare for Nazis, though.
Yeah,
Nazis are very good at working class populism. They that's part of the politics.
Yeah, that's how they get people hooked into it. And he knows that
it's not all it's not a bait and switch. Nazism is a possible working class outlet, especially if it's paired with like nationalism and isolationism. I don't think our economy any longer can support that kind of like nationalism, nationalist economic thinking. But it's certainly like the history of Nazism was an economic solution for the working class in Germany.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you to some extent, but what the Night of the Long Knives was resolving the conflict between being a pro-corporatist movement and being a working class movement. And Hitler went with, we're going to kill everyone who believe the things that Nick Fuentes is saying.
100%.
But it did start that way, and it was very much about that in the early stages. Was like, here's an alternative to socialism, which is a racist socialism, essentially.
Sure, yeah, and here's an alternative to socialism/internationalism that is a nationalist, German first, take care of your own economic model when they clearly needed an economic model. Do you want to say what the Night of the Long Knives is?
Yeah, I mean, it was a night when during the rise of Nazism, there was an organization called the SA, which was a paramilitary organization that was responsible for policing protecting their rallies and going around beating the shit out of other kinds of political movements. And they had very much this working class politics built into it, which is why a lot of like young Germans who couldn't get a job, young men who could not get a job, found the political home in the SA. And at some point during Hitler's rise, the very wealthy backers, the Krupps and people like this, the Bear, made Hitler choose a direction, and he had his friends murdered.
Yeah, get your boys under control.
Yeah. So it has to be reined in. You have to make a choice here about how serious you are. And if you are, you have to get rid of these people, and he had them killed.
He had the SS, the other paramilitary group, took out at least all the leadership.
Yeah.
Yep, and that was a inflection point for what the politics of the movement. I think you could argue that that was a practical matter in order for the movement, the politics, to continue in a sustained way. It needed the big money and the donors, and that was Hitler made that calculation.
Yeah.
Not that like some Nazis are better than other Nazis. I would say all Nazis are quite terrible. Just to be on the record for that.
Yeah. But it's interesting to see like things I would say come out of Nick Fuentes' mouth, but like twisted through like this prism of like get people to do horrible things to innocent people. It's just it's fascinating to watch him do his stuff.
But not a new phenomenon.
Not a new phenomenon. And the other thing, like, I think it's predictable that like a lot of these groypers will come in for these like sort of young unemployed man politics, and they'll find at some point that like the Kochs have them wiped out in favor of a more corporatist bent, which I think is like the staffers of the Republican Party now are all like old school neo-Nazi type, like elitist type sensibility, and they will sort of inherit the movement. But a lot of this too, I'll just add this, like what it seems to me is happening right now is a question of whether Jews belong in the white nationalist movement they're building or not. And some of that has to do with like disgust that everyone feels over the genocide. And this is why this stuff is really dangerous for Jews, fellow Jews. Zionism gives these people permission to say, look how terrible they are, which is not at all an excuse to be anti-Semitic, but they will use it, and they are using it. But there's this like Candace Owen, Nick Fuentes faction that Tucker Carlson is increasingly a part of to sort of set Jews outside the movement. And then there's obviously people who are very much Zionists, Christians and Jews who are very much Zionists and want Jews to stay inside the movement. So that's sort of the battle that's happening in MAC, and I think that's what this is about.
Yeah, I think that's right. I also think that what's the genocide in Gaza colors a lot of politics, but I think what's most dangerous is any sort of ethno-state, defending any sort of ethno-state to me is problematic for your politics. But it also should raise, like, who are your political bedfellows? Who are you willing to do business with and work with and rally with? And if they are white nationalists, you should not for a moment think that you are safe. No one is safe with a rabid white nationalist male-dominated movement.
Yep.
Very few people. There's not really a true purity test of who's going to be able to be in and out. You're not safe. You can have a night of the long knives where you're safe one day and you're not safe the next day. And it doesn't have to do with your racial purity or even your political purity. It's going to have to do with power. And so what really needs to, like, if you're brokering in power, if you're the ADL and you're cozying up to the right wing, and you can wake up the next morning and you can have no job. Yep. You can have no bearing, no clout anymore.
Yeah. I mean, once they're done with the Jews, to put a fine point on what you're saying, once they're done with the Jews, they're going to have the same conversation about Catholics. They're going to have the same conversation then about Italians and Irish and Spanish. They're going to go through every group that was whiteified, and they're going to de-whiteify them because they have to have someone like this to fight about. That's what they do. Right.
You're not safe because you might be the wrong regional. You might be in the wrong region. You might have the tent will get smaller. Yeah. It doesn't get bigger.
Right.
Anyways,
because this is what they get off on, is like funding someone to gang up on and bully. Okay.
Yeah, and it's like uber consolidation of power and wealth, and so you're gonna have like 3 people on top.
Yeah,
and they don't need to have a whole bunch of people. I mean, that's the thing. They're gonna create their own demise, because if it's 3 people versus the entire world, even with all the money in the world, you might have a problem. But like, they will continue on this. They don't stop themselves.
Yeah.
We will always defend truth. We will always defend America. And we will always defend our friends against the slander of bad actors who serve someone else's agenda. That includes Tucker Carlson, who remains, and as I have said before, always will be a close friend of the Heritage Foundation. The venomous coalition attacking him are sowing division. Their attempt to cancel him will fail. Most importantly, the American people expect us to be focusing on our political adversaries on the left, not attacking our friends on the right. I disagree with, and even abhor, things that Nick Fuentes says. But canceling him is not the answer either.
1 week later.
I made a mistake, and I let you down. And I let down this institution. And I am sorry for that. Period. Full stop.
All right. Last but not least, the Tesla board.
Oh, gosh, I don't know this headline.
75% of the board has approved a $1 trillion payment to Elon Musk. Tesla made...
Is that his golden parachute?
Tesla made $7 billion in 2024. And they have promised to pay him $1 trillion.
When?
I don't know. This is the big thing, is this is conditional.
He never talks to them again.
Right. Yeah, he's supposed to like have a certain number of self-driving cars, and he's supposed to have production up to this level, and a certain number of cars. But like, they don't make this much money. So I don't know where the trillion is coming from. I guess
I think there's parenting advice we can get from this. If you need your child to do something, promise something you absolutely can't ever deliver on, and just see the magic happen.
Yeah, just watch them go, just chase after it, and you hope you forget.
They'll chase after it, and then after a few hours of trying, this is probably what will happen with Elon Musk. After a few hours of trying, they'll say, "Where's my prize?" And you'll say that I can't, and then they'll cry.
I mean, this is just an absolute baffling consolidation of wealth, and I kind of wonder whether
consolidation of wealth if the wealth doesn't exist.
Well, so what I'm wondering is, can he borrow against it?
I don't know.
Can he borrow against the promise that one day he'll have $1 trillion?
Who would let him? From whom?
From a bank who's willing to give it to him on instant.
He's going to walk in with a letter from his board that says he's good for $1 trillion.
I mean, it's public knowledge that he has this money.
He doesn't have this money.
Well, he has it if he.
That's a wild headline. I don't even know what to make of that.
$1 trillion. All right. Anyway, that's hardly headlines.
Great job.
All right, and you have the...
I do. I have the artifact from the New York Times, the great feminization of the world debate.
Okay.
So
they invented women in 1980, and now it's experiment has gone too far.
We're wondering how it's going. So Helen Andrews and Leah Libresco Sargeant, two conservative feminists, were invited to speak on this matter with the great Ross Douthat. Douthat. I'm going to say his name wrong every time.
Do it on purpose.
Yeah. To figure out what's happening in our workplace and why women ruined it is sort of the thrust.
I think not why is because they're terrible, but how, I think, is the question.
True. How did women? I think that they were trying to arrive at how and why women suck and what we should do about it, aside from extermination. So the New York Times ran with a headline for this, which was, "How did women ruin?
Did women destroy?
Did women destroy the work?"
I'm just asking questions. I'm not saying they did or not. I'm putting that out there.
And then the liberal feminists of the internet were freaking out. So then they changed the headline to "Did liberal feminism destroy the work?"
Fair enough.
The subhead of this is, "And can conservative feminism fix it?" The answer is no.
Spoiler alert.
But so obviously, I mean, there's a lot to mock here, which is fun, but it's a fascinating conversation between two people that are so wrapped up in some bizarro gender ideology that either on purpose or not on purpose.
Not even aware of it.
They're talking about obvious material conditions, but cannot see it. It's one of these, they keep walking closer to what's actually happening. And then they're like, "It's because women are hysterical. It's because women have to give birth." So it's so I'm just I thought it was fascinating.
First of all, what is a conservative feminist? Is a conservative feminist a woman who's conservative and therefore they have cover to hate on women?
I'm so glad you asked.
I don't know what that means.
So
these people, they don't appear to be feminists in any meaningful way.
So Helen Andrews is a conservative hack.
Okay.
Who has written a book about why boomers suck and is basically.
But doesn't she want to go back to what the boomers were doing? Isn't that what being conservative is?
She writes absolutely notional bullshit, blaming things on notional categories that she's created in her own mind. And she's a conservative feminist, I guess, because she hates women and wants to make sure that men are in charge, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. Or masculinize women, which I think from the debate I gather, she feels that she has adopted a lot of the traits about men that make them superior to women.
She believes,
Or
I mean,
sort of-
I guess she believes in that there are feminine and masculine traits, and she believes the masculine traits are more likely to seek truth and do good things. So I guess that's perhaps how she operates in the workplace.
At one point she accuses her opponent of being feminine by doing what she interpreted as like an underhanded attack on her, which I think is like, you're debating a woman, wouldn't you expect them to be? But it's like a put down. It's like, that's feminine. It's a put down.
Yeah.
For these feminists.
Leah Libresco Sargeant's more interesting because she's like an atheist converted into a Catholic. So her conservative feminism is very much because she's anti-choice. And also they're both gender essentialists. They both believe there is biological, sex-determined gender truth.
Okay.
And they believe in those two categories. So I guess that's partially what would make them a conservative feminist versus like a non-conservative feminist. Leah Sargeant's interesting because she's like kind of more like she humanizes and respects, I guess, the things that are different about women, the things that are true about women. She thinks there's a place for them, but she believes that place is that place is, I guess, not where men's place is, and men's place are the primary, I guess, not only breadwinners, but like protectors of society. And women have a particular place that should be honored, but it's not the same.
I see. Well, yeah, she has like some things that people admire about Catholicism, which is that they understand the world to be more than like money and making money. So they hold on to some like
charity matters. Sorry, I'm interrupting. Go ahead.
The frailty of the human body, the importance of works and achievement and charity and virtue outside of the marketplace, which Andrews can't even like contend with that. She's such a dedicated capitalist. But I think the Libresco Sargeant, like, I think illustrates very well why conservative, even with the affectations of like being something like quality-wise like an anti-capitalist, this Catholic conservative stuff is so toxic because it's incredibly conservative. It's just not necessarily pro-capitalist in the same way. Right.
Well, and honestly, there's these two, although the debate is contentious because like Helen Andrews is miserable to be around, they agree on biological essentialism.
I can't believe you would say that underhanded, backbiting comment. Is this because you're a woman?
I think that Helen Andrews would find that I can be pretty direct. But they agree on biological essentialism.
Okay.
They agree on whether they know it or not. I mean, Helen Andrews does, but they agree that capitalism is the most important thing, and it must be like basically it's primary to trying to figure out. They have all these, how do we figure out how to, Leah's trying to figure out how do you figure out how to protect people when they have, necessary things like pregnancies or illnesses, I don't know, ask the profiteering assholes to pay for it. It's beyond like understanding.
Yeah.
So they agree on biological essentialism. They agree on the primacy of capitalism is like the best way to organize for markets and for our society. They agree on that there should not be major social safety nets or welfare. Like Leah Libresco Sargeant does not believe that single women should get SNAP benefits. So like,
wait, did you gather that from that debate?
No, I did some research.
What the fuck?
Yes.
I thought she was saying that was a stupid thing.
That's a choice that women are making, and she does not believe that unmarried women making that choice should be having babies. So because she's a Catholic.
She wants to punish you for having sex out of wedlock and not respecting the institution of marriage. That's fucking crazy. Can you imagine being like, I'm a feminist. I think this woman and her child who should starve to death.
She believes that private or faith-based institutions or private faith-based families should provide charitable acts and such, but she does not believe the state should be involved in that. Okay. The state should definitely be involved in making sure women don't have abortions, though. Yeah. So, anyways, they agree on a lot. The debate, though, is weirdly contentious, also full of a lot of dumb things. But
I mean, it's fascinating
to watch them try to figure out why they think these things.
As gross as the headline is, the grossest part was like the teaser that they chose to go with was the part where they really were sort of fighting with each other, and the part where Andrews was sort of acting the most like embarrassingly like
Cringy
and like talking like offended and sort of least capable of like championing her point of view. And they picked that because I guess it was salacious or whatever. But that to me was the grossest part. Is like there's this hour-long thing. You're gonna pick the 3 minutes that makes them look the most like nasty,
I know.
which is
It was anti-feminist.
Yeah,
and it was I mean, these two women that are presenting ideas that are ultimately hateful and violent towards women, and I would argue all humans, sort of deserve that. It's sort of they're deserving of being painted in the least positive light. However, it was then done in an extremely sexist way. And then you have Ross Douthat, who looks like a calm, put together moderator.
he looks like the reasonable one, which is crazy because he probably is a fucking moron.
He is a moron. You should read his op-eds.
Oh my god!
Actually, you should not read any more op-eds.
I mean, it's funny you said that to me, and you picked this. I want to mention Kamau Bell a couple times because he wrote a really hilarious reaction to this. But one thing he said about Douthat or whatever his name is that he's a first draft of a character which is hilarious.
He's like first draft of a character. He also called him the Ezra Klein of Ezra Kleins.
It's hilarious.
And anytime I can nail Ezra Klein, I will. And if you read my latest Pace on AI, I threw him in there.
Speaking of Ezra Klein,
oh no,
this year he was talking about how Epstein was probably a socialite who knew all these wealthy and powerful people and a pedophile, and probably the two had nothing to do with that. So Ezra Klein has a perfect record of being wrong about everything.
Ezra Klein thought this man kept those two parts of his life separate.
That's what he said. He said that very explicitly, that he believed those things were just separate parts.
The only way you could believe that is being the dumbest person alive.
Yeah, or being paid by Mossad, so maybe a crime.
Right, or you're covering from. Okay, let me give some excerpts. We're not going to play the debate because I don't want the New York Times to sue us.
Yeah.
But there's some good ones in here that I'll read. So they talk about this book called Warriors and Worriers. That I can imagine that you can figure out who the warriors are and who the worriers are in our society.
The warriors are the guys who sit on the couch all day playing video games, and the warriors are the women who take care of the kids and go to work.
You're right, and that's actually been happening for millennia. That is the chimps do that too. So this is Andrews talking. That phrase comes from a psychologist called Joyce Bennison, who did a book called Warriors and Worriers. And that is the book that I found very enlightening because it was not about the differences between individual men and individual women. One time out on this. Helen Andrews, I found this out about her. None of these ideas are hers. She just writes ideas about other people's ideas. So like the entire Great Feminization, which is her essay that's been getting all of this play, is based wholesale off of someone else's book.
Yeah, it's like
she's
a crib note.
Look, I found something.
Yeah.
Anyways, I mean, why haven't
she says at some point, like, my fee for writing something is very cheap. Is this? Yeah, I can see why.
I mean, she's a woman. She probably can't write her own idea. Warriors and Worriers. That's a book I found very enlightening because it is not about the difference between individual men and individual women. That's something that has been subject to a lot of study, that if you give men and women polls and they will give different answers to your survey, but this is, again, her making no sense. She often speaks and you're like, what is she saying? That's why I guess she gets to be an academic at the New York Times. Her subject was group dynamics. How do groups of men interact versus how do groups of women interact?
Okay.
Groups of men, Fortnite, groups of women, childcare. And that seemed to be to correspond very closely to the changes that we would describe as wokeness. So go on this journey with Helen.
Okay, I'm going.
Her theory is that this originated in the mists of prehistory, that men were organized to have warrior bands, which meant that they needed to have hierarchical structures.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to know how to take orders, how to give orders, and how to not take it personally when their leader made a choice that they didn't agree with. And they needed to be able to engage in conflict, to fight, and then when that fight was over, you needed to be able to make peace.
and men are famous for not taking things personally or having an ego.
Right.
That's a very masculine thing. Yeah. And making peace.
There's entire like undergraduate study programs, peace programs, like peace studies, which I'm sure Helen Andrews would say is deeply feminized. But there's a lot of evidence that when women are involved in peacemaking, like real peacemaking, like in conflict areas, that it lasts longer. But because the feminizing of the academy has led them to not care about the truth, like looking at studies. They instead should be searching the truth by feeling their vibes. So
just making shit up. So that's how you really get to the truth.
These women academics just think that there's more peacemaking.
Actually, looking at the data is a feminist characteristic. A masculine characteristic is closing your eyes and imagining how people were 5,000 years ago, and then pretending that's how they are now. That's what truth seeking really is.
That's Helen Andrews' truth seeking.
Yeah.
And that women became more oriented towards child rearing, were more likely to have protracted conflict. I will say child rearing is a lot of protracted conflict with my husband.
Not to mention your children.
We're more likely to have protracted conflict with their rivals within the tribe. I don't know why that would be, but fine. And we're less likely to reconcile, because when you really don't want to reconcile with the people in your tribe. There are similar insights that can be gleaned from primatology. Says the words of Helen Andrews.
Primatology is such junk science. I mean, imagine being like, I know what lion society is like because I've been watching my house cat. I mean, that's just how stupid. Here's two different species. I'm going to learn about one by studying the other. And I'm going to be able to tell you what they're like.
I can tell you that based on my house cat, lions like to pee on hardwood floors.
I mean, I don't know if this is news to anyone, but human beings and chimpanzees exhibit different behaviors. Like, it's junk science, but all right.
Primates to tribes now to 2025. So she goes, if someone gave me that book and said, now speculate on what the results of feminization of institutions will be, I don't know what I would have been able to guess. But when I look at wokeness and say that it has coincided almost exactly in time with the demographic tip over of various institutions from being majority male to majority female, and if the changes of wokeness resemble feminine behavior as described by evolutionary biology, then maybe that starts to make a lot of sense.
This is another Kamau Bell offering, which is why are these white people speaking about wokeness without black people present? Because wokeness is that originated in the black community as a way of understanding like systemic oppression, and not buying into like the hustle culture or whatever. In this case, I think it's helpful to I think that point is well taken, but they're not using wokeness in that sense. They're using wokeness in a very particular sense, which is like what the right wing has been hysterical about, the way the culture is moving over the last 5 years. Do you have a working definition of what she means when she says wokeness?
I mean, she does not provide one very.
She gives examples,
eagerly,
but she doesn't really define it. She's it's when you cancel people, it's when you are not allowed to say certain things without getting in trouble.
Right. I mean, Ross Douthat asks him specifically, what is the essential nature of wokeness? And she goes, let's pick one flavor of wokeness, and then decides to talk about the Me Too movement.
Right.
And basically says that there was a change. The Me Too movement, it was a point in culture where we had to suddenly believe all women, despite their credibility.
Okay.
And we had to willingly cancel men at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, including that poor actor who didn't do anything wrong besides had awkward sex.
Including Aziz Ansari, who had an awkward date and then got canceled, right? So, but she doesn't answer. She doesn't really give you what wokeness is.
For one thing, Aziz was not canceled. Netflix was eager to have him back to do another season of his show. He just took a break from the limelight, as one would do if they were humiliated like that in public, which is a risk of being a celebrity, I think, more than a risk of cancel culture. He was not canceled. And in fact, I remember the discourse at the time, even from cancelers, was like, this is kind of gross and not really what Me Too is about. So it's a strange example because no one actually, the famous people who were actually Me Too'd, almost all of them were gross and guilty. And I don't even think it's controversial.
I did go back to her essay to try to figure out wokeness because she would not give a definition of wokeness in this debate.
Mm-hmm.
She was very difficult to pin down in this debate, and I do chalk that up to her being a woman. But I did go back to her essay
It's very slippery, these women.
To see if, I mean, slippery and weak of mind.
Intellectually dishonest.
They have a hard time defining the terms that they're using because they talk to children. So they're sort of like making up little, They
exist in the grays.
Baby talk and sort of making things up as they go along. So even in her essay, she doesn't define it the first few times she uses it. She says these really amazing sentences like, everything you think of as wokeness is simply an epiphenomenon of the demographic of feminization, which is like her thesis is, as you feminize, you get wokeness. And she's like, I define wokeness as a thing that happens when you feminize. It's like, you can't make an argument that way.
Yeah.
But then she does say, everything you think of as wokeness involves prioritizing the feminine over the masculine, empathy over rationality, safety over risk, cohesion over competition. That's the closest I got to a definition from wokeness.
Safety over risk.
Cohesion over competition.
Okay.
Which is weird because men also do better peacemaking and move on, which to me would speak of cohesion. But apparently cohesion over competition, that's when cohesion is not as good.
Okay.
And empathy over rationality.
Okay.
Those are her...
But not empathy for perpetrators, empathy only for victims, I guess.
I mean, who knows? So she's... The argument is circular because she's saying feminization leads to wokeness. Wokeness is a result of feminine qualities. Feminine qualities, when in these institutions, lead you to wokeness. What is wokeness? Oh, wokeness is what I've decided are these feminine qualities. And just go around and around. It's infuriating. But she, that's the thesis.
Yeah. So what I think what she's really reacting to, and we talked about this previously with Barry Weiss, and I wrote a piece about Kendrick Lamar's halftime show where I go into this in some detail, but I think we had a cultural revolution in the United States. And it was a long time coming, and it was about long-term problems in the culture, like racism and sexism in the workplaces, in the universities, and civil society that needed to be corrected. And a new generation of people. And the interesting thing is...
Leah Libresco Sargeant does sort of touch on this.
Libresco Sargeant, I think, is kind of right about this because she says this is a repeat of things that have happened in U.S. culture before, which is sort of a purging of the old and in with the new. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it was generational. I mean, you could have the same discourse about the 60s counterculture. You could have this, you could go back a couple times, the progressive era. You could go back a couple times. I actually think a very interesting... The reason I'm using the term cultural revolution is I think it's a very interesting corollary with the Chinese cultural revolution, which was experienced by people who were on the wrong side of it as this irrational eruption of like, we're going to change things and we're going to be directly confrontational about it now. And that it, the sense of it's going too far and you can't be reasoned with. This is the impression you have of a revolution, which it can't be reasoned with. It can't be talked over. It proceeds despite the objections of the powerful, right? And it's founded in like these fundamental virtues which are so different and upending of like previously assumed virtues and principles and norms that it feels like an out of control thing, particularly for people who are conservative or like in elite situations. The problem with the American one was it wasn't coupled with a actual real revolution. So the people in power economically were able to put their thumb on the scale and steer our cultural revolution away from any of the fundamental problems that were causing racism and sexism and stuff. They wanted to remain completely focused on identity and not get into the economic sphere because what they wanted was for people in different identitarian groups to tear each other apart as opposed to realize their common struggle. And I think that led to a lot of crazy things like the Believe What Women slogan is a reaction to this thing that happened with rape victims and only rape victims, which is, what are you wearing? What'd you say to him? Why were you there in the first place? In contrast to something like a victim of a home invasion. Why'd you put your house there? Did you lock your door? Right. All these questions you get. It was never meant to be. And I think this is some of the fervor of a revolution pushes past like what it's supposed to be or what it ought to be, which was like, it was never really supposed to be, regardless of what women say, you have to believe them, regardless of any evidence to the contrary. You just give them the same credibility as you give any other victim of crime, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to dispose of innocent until proven guilty. You're not dismissing the accusation out of hand because it's a woman talking about sexual violence. So anyway, that's my impression of what she's talking about with what wokeness is, what she's against.
Mm-hmm.
And she's one of the leaders of like a counter revolution, essentially.
Yes, I think that she largely, whether she knows it or not, is making an intellectually dishonest argument where she knows that she wants to dismiss. She knows she wants to pair wokeness with women in the workplace because to her both are bad and need to be undone, and she grasps at whatever she can to pair them, and so and
she's trying to appeal to people who are very much motivated to kill two birds with one stone,
and to get to. I mean, as a woman, I would say feed two birds with one scone.
It's because you're not competitive enough with the birds, I guess.
Yeah, I feel as a caretaker, we need to change our language.
You have empathy for the birds.
I think that it's a opportunistic argument that doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you try to actually peel back. What do you mean wokeness and female traits? It's a mess, but it's useful because I think what her purpose is to say wokeness is terrible. It's hurting us. It's hurting our innovation, our capitalism, our profit making.
Yeah, we're losing to China because of this.
Our
basically.
Society's stability.
Yeah.
Also, having all these women in the workplace and not following more traditional gender norms is making us too soft on workers. We have too many accommodations. There's too many. It's strengthening a part of our society that we should not be strengthening. And we need to stop both those things.
Yeah. And we can't tell the truth. And the truth being the things that were assumed to be true with very little evidence for 100 years. Like for instance, that women, because they have kids, are less equipped to be in the workplace. This assumption that obviously women are going to be happier and are better suited to be at home. So you can't. One of the examples she uses is if you have a female protege, you can't bring her to the side and say, "Listen, you probably shouldn't do this career because it's not going to be suitable to having kids because you're going to get sued for that."
Right. So she's saying, right. Oh, you're saying that Helen's arguing that we've also created a world where we're not allowed to say the truth.
Right. Because
the truth will get you in trouble.
Yeah.
And so we have to shed all of these these revolutionary ideas, go back to when it was more stable.
Right.
And while Sargeant does not agree with that, she does not agree with that thesis. She actually has a much more sophisticated analysis of wokeness.
Yeah, much more interesting.
And she has a more a nicer vision for a future where there is charity and good. She just does not want any of that to be state mandated or hurt capitalism in any way. So it's kind of like, I mean, it's a woo-woo argument that doesn't make any sense. But then again, she's Catholic. Anyways, I do think you're right though that like this revolution without the actual political or economic revolution leaves a pretty unprotected. It's basically, it's easy to take shots on wokeness because it is kind of a big mess of a thing that's has not shown to qualitatively change people's lives that much, and so the right wing coming for it is not surprising, and it's not necessarily something as a left winger that I'm looking to protect either.
Right, because I think in a lot of working class people have been turned against wokeness, not because they couldn't be won to forms of anti-racism or anti-sexism, but because they intuited how these things were ways of screwing them over in particular, which I think is true. I think that the liberals used like identity politics to advance the interests of their bosses, Wall Street, corporate power, and that kind of thing, way of disciplining workers and a way of turning workers against each other. And workers didn't like that. And what they ended up blaming was anti-racism, but it was just the particular forms of anti-racism that became acceptable in corporate spaces, which was like, we're going to sit around and we're going to talk about how bad we are inside.
Right.
So we're not looking outside at the structures that have led to all these like differences in outcome and the way that you relate to your community versus other communities and all these things is all about personal failing. It's all about what you've done wrong or what your people have done wrong.
And Sargeant, who has a more sophisticated understanding of wokeness, takes a shot at that because she's like, people considering how are we doing things badly in society? Are we doing bad things? Are we doing evil things? Should we reform? Is it in her mind with her philosophy, that's a positive thing. Mm-hmm. But then she takes the cheap shot at wokeness and says, well, it's not about self-flagellation, which is, this sort of like performative wokeness is a stereotype that exists for this movement because a lot of it was true and a lot of it was because it got captured by corporations and of course they're going to do the shallowest version because they're not going to open up a conversation about making all of their businesses cooperate.
Yes, because it could not be animated by solidarity, which is that you and I are in this together. We have more in common, we have difference, and we can win a future on both of our sakes, because that version was precluded. It could only be animated by guilt. I have done something wrong and I owe it to someone else to fix it.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got a couple of other excerpts which I think are fun. One is Ross trying to get at, if this cancel culture thing is really a female phenomenon.
Okay.
Or if there's been other examples in history where before the feminization of the workplace, you might see cancel culture.
Yeah, like the witch hunts originally. I know that the witch hunts were just women canceling everybody. That's why it's called witch hunts, because the witches were canceling everybody.
The witches canceled.
So that's the original witch hunt. But were there witch hunts that were led by men as opposed to women?
Well, I mean, the witches were hunting the other witches because women like to destabilize and backbite each other. Right. Okay, so Ross asks about, he goes, you can tell me I'm making a bad point. Well, actually, then we go to the beginning. It's even better. Ross goes, don't you think, though, that there have been a lot of moments and eras in history where institutions have failed catastrophically at the task of truth-seeking? And just in terms of the overall, truth-seeking is the stand-in for profit-making. And just in terms of the overall societal consequences, the stakes of this argument, again, we're not just talking about workplace dynamics. We're talking about academia's failing to solve serious problems, journalists failing to report the whole truth about the world. This is your critique of feminization. I think it is a reasonable critique of things that wokeness did, but you can find plenty of historical case studies where regimes, systems, forms of government did all the kinds of things that you're bemoaning under entirely male-dominated conditions. Mm-hmm. Andrews, I'm baffled by people who think that a litany of male failures is some kind of rebuttal. Not to say that you're making a bad point. I think you're making a very sensible point.
Yeah, so this was strange because her reaction to every sensible, wait a second, that doesn't make sense, here's why, is to immediately belittling and nasty. But in the case of Sargeant, she doesn't apologize, but in this case, she apologized. Immediately is deferential to him, which is so, oh my God, so gross.
And Ross goes, well, you can tell me I'm making a bad point. It's not a litany of male failure. It's the kind of male failures. If the stakes here are feminized institutions don't adequately seek truth, but it seems to be that there are many situations where institutions fail to seek truth under male domination, why are we assuming that this is the female element in particular?
Yeah, and this is annoying because she managed to make him look intelligent, because that's a good point, and he understands his own point, and she does what she did over and over again in this debate, is misunderstand the point, or try to make it seem like the point was a slightly different point.
So she goes, one counterexample of male failure and male failure to seek the truth that gets thrown back at me a lot is the Red Scare. And how can you say that women are the only people that ever do witch hunts? Think about McCarthyism.
Pause.
And this is perhaps my favorite line. And without wanting to get too deep into the Joe McCarthy did nothing wrong rabbit hole.
Oh my God. Yeah, so her actual answer is that was totally justified.
Right. Of course, she goes exactly there, because she goes on to say, this is different. McCarthyism was actually in many ways, quote, quite masculine. Think about loyalty oaths. And you're like, where is she going with this? Where is she going? Where is she going with this? And she goes, the whole reason why university systems and schools and other institutions wanted to have loyalty oaths, which were sort of a banner phenomenon of McCarthyism, is because they said, well, we simply cannot have an ongoing atmosphere of suspicion and rumor and some sort of witch hunt. Yes, because the McCarthyism didn't at all feel like suspicion and rumor. We need to have clarity. So we'll have a loyalty oath, and everyone will takes it. Who takes it will be fine, and everyone who doesn't, well, that'll be a problem. So she's arguing now in favor of not only is she sucking up to McCarthy, but she is arguing now in favor that loyalty oaths are quite masculine and very useful, because they completely got rid of all the suspicion and rumor and backbiting and passive aggression that marked the Red Scare.
Right. So, my God. So it's not canceling people. It's the style of canceling people, right? And in the case of McCarthy, is they were seeking truth as opposed to seeking fiction, which is there's never been a woman who was sexually harassed on a university campus or on a job who didn't have it coming. But all these people that McCarthy was after wasn't for his political career, wasn't for grandstanding. It was all these people who were a danger to the nation, for real. So it was all about truth fighting. This is great. I mean, just, this idea, just for a second, this idea that canceling is a recent phenomenon, or by the liberals, going just back the last few decades, we have Colin Kaepernick, the Dixie Chicks, going back even further, like all these people who were canceled, like with the witch hunts against like gay people in schools and stuff. I mean, this has been around. Bud Light, this stuff has been around forever. This right-wing canceling thing. But what this comes down to is when you cancel people for not being conservative, it's masculine. When you cancel people for not being liberal enough, it's feminine. That's what she's really saying.
Yeah.
And so it's all a style. It's all vibes.
Yeah, I think that's right. And she seems to be, she's not hiding it that much. She's basically saying that the things that protect conservative ideas, conservative institutions, conservative ideologies, notions that have been associated with strength and patriotism and profit and innovation, which she has coded male, if you're protecting those things, then you do it at all in any cost with any sort of tactic. And if you're threatening those things in any way, that must be a symptom of wokeness. And therefore, she's going to correlate it to women in the workplace tipping over 50%, which is also highly problematic because even in the workplaces where that's the case, they're junior staff.
Right.
They're not leaders.
Right. And she says, like, but all their bosses who know better are terrified of their junior staffers. And then she immediately will say, but it's not the junior staffers that are demanding it, it's the law. Right. It's the law that's the problem because they're afraid of being sued.
Right. And if you really want to give her that, if you really want to give her, it can be junior staffers because the junior staffers will use, threats of lawsuits to make the bosses do what they want.
Or gossip.
Yeah.
They'll gossip about you.
Yeah. I mean, why organize for better wages when you can gossip to get the boss to do what you want?
Who knew it was that powerful? Backed by is that powerful?
There are industries which are clearly not male dominated at this point by any stretch of the statistics. That she's still bemoaning the phenomenon. So her whole argument is a shambles. But I do think it's funny for everyone to know that she's pro McCarthyism and loyalty oaths.
Yeah, and she's pro. I mean, and this does get back to her essential point here, which is that it's masculine. What she says is competition. And feminine is empathy. What she's actually talking about is cruelty. Mm-hmm. Is cruelty versus empathy. If you're canceling people because you're being cruel to a defenseless minority, say gay people, black people,
you agree. We have a guest, and she's really into Daddy's point.
As long as you're being cruel, then it reads as masculine behavior, and therefore is acceptable to her. But if it's canceling in favor of like the defenseless or the oppressed, then it's feminine behavior and it appalls her.
Right. And she needs to make this point, and she needs to exterminate any weakness or softness in the zeitgeist, because what she has ultimately desired is the ability to mercilessly exploit workers and to make it so they have no needs that are reasonable to protect. And if they are to be protected, they're protected by individuals, by charity, but not by the state systems and not by not by legal systems. They are only protected informally, because the best result here is to have ultimate exploitation of people and to think that is a good idea.
Yeah, and that goes doubly for vulnerable groups of people who are made vulnerable and therefore can be exploited even more, like black people and immigrants.
Right. And so both Andrews and Sargeant fall into this where they have, Sargeant would say that there's a male body and a female body. There's and that they're different and they're both important. But both of them have an ideal worker, an ideal person that is not frail and is not at all not the norm. And they can give the most. They're the most intelligent. They're the strongest. They can give all the hours of their day. They're not distracted by caretaking. They're not distracted by social dynamics or family dynamics. They are the ultimate worker. Both of these thinkers have that.
And that person is automatically man.
That's it. As a cisgender white male American, I guess, in this case, they've got a particular, ideal. Anyone who's not that is a problem. What do you do with those problems? And so Sargeant would say there should be room in society to allow for the difference. Like, you need women to reproduce. Actually, they both sort of say this. There should be room in society for the difference, especially the female-male difference, because you need reproduction. But who provides for that? Who pays for that? Who protects that? They have really dissatisfying answers. And if you start to apply any sort of material analysis to the problem or the solutions, it falls apart. Because it's a material problem and they're offering gender psychology answers.
Yeah. And it's like the only way that exists, this worker who's unencumbered by the responsibilities of family and this worker that you're describing can only exist in if there's a nuclear family where the man is the sole breadwinner and the woman does basically does unpaid domestic labor, takes care of the kids, takes care of the house. All the reproduction of labor is taken care of pro bono by women who are subservient to their husbands, so that husbands can then be completely subservient to their employer.
Right. The only way a model like this works is that you absorb all human frailty, all of the natural human body's conditions, reproduction, aging, illness, disability, exhaustion, all of that, all of that gets absorbed by 50% of the population.
Yeah.
It is their job to care for that, to make sure that's not a problem for the bosses. And it's obviously, you'll see arguments. There's a couple of artifacts I want to bring forth that say when you make invisible all of that work, you're not just harming the women or the childbearers. You're harming everyone. All human bodies require this. And Leah Sargeant makes this argument a bit too. But the question isn't whether humans can endlessly give their bodies to labor for other people's profits. Everyone knows they can't. The question is, what sort of system do you create? What kind of discursive system, what kind of actual infrastructure systems do you create to manage that? And their answers are extremely poor because they are unwilling or unable to see the problem materially.
Yeah. And they're also there's a couple other things. Like, one is the attack on trans people was, they love to attack trans people and his political opportunism, but also the whole transgender ideology, what they call, threatened this, because the deconstruction of gender, which was represented by trans and non-binary people, basically says that this is all fucking nonsense, that all this stuff that you think is biologically hardwired is just a social construction, and we can be however we want.
Right.
And we don't have to be any particular way because you want us to be. So
and you're using a particular gendered social construction to erect a massive exploitation scheme, and it doesn't have to be that way. First of all, we break down the categories. We also make visible all the labor, and suddenly it's a very different calculation for people.
Yeah, they have to hinge this argument on everyone would be happier because they would be more in line with the way that they're born to be. And there's all the contributions that women can make intellectually, in art, in culture, in science, in technology, in political leadership are completely erased because they're therefore not allowed to be in this public sphere at all. And if you can't conceive of social units besides the family, you might say, well, there's a division of labor here. Doesn't it make sense to have a division of labor? Shouldn't that division of labor be based somewhat on, your biological predisposition? The woman has the kids after all.
Right.
She's the one who does the breastfeeding after all. So it doesn't make sense to have this division of labor. And there's some degree to which division of labor makes sense, but it isn't families that raise children. It's communities that raise children. And you can have divisions of labor around who wants to do childcare and who wants to do education, right, and letting mothers, even though, in our society, mothers can't have it all because even with all this feminist progress, they still are the primary people who are taking care of their kids. And there still are the primary people who are taking care of their houses while they're forced to have a career because they can't afford not to.
More often, they're also the primary person bringing in income. And these arguments are made, and they rely heavily on these biological determinist arguments, and they sort of like, oh, well, there's a important need for there to be caretaking. Wouldn't we all be happier? It's a trick. Yes, humans are happier when they are taken care of. Humans are happier when they are fed and well rested and have connections to their family and their neighbors. Humans are happier when they can have children and not worry about, and have connection to those children and not worry that they also won't be able to feed those children.
Yeah.
And they shove down your throat. Well, the answer to that, the reason you're not happy, is because we've created distance between the traditional way that men and women ought to be, which we've created distance partially because economically, most families, and this has always been the case even before liberal feminists got women into the workplace, could not afford to live unless women were working.
Yeah.
Not just working in the home. They were working as, nursemaids or as sharecroppers or, in the cotton fields. They were working.
Yeah. And they were just as miserable before those careers were, quote, feminized. Right. Like, you hate your job. It's not because women are there too. Because if all the women disappeared tomorrow, you'd still fucking hate your job. And back in the days where middle class women were precluded from the workplace and couldn't have credit cards, and men were the only places in ad agencies on Madison Avenue, they still hated their jobs. They hated them because jobs suck. That's not how you develop human creativity and spirit.
Jobs suck, and that type of isolated family units that are not part of communities, that sucks. It all sucks.
Yeah.
It's not because women ruin the workplace.
And we can, like, this is the moment where you sort of say, imagining the actual solution to this is communities which, like, allow people to be caretakers sometimes, allow people to be steel workers sometimes, allow people to be intellectuals sometimes, allow people the full range of, like, human experience and human labor, emotions, connections, and treating children not as, like, the property of the family, but treating them as, like, part of, like, a recreation of the human species, which means that they belong to the entire community, and their rearing is a responsibility of the whole community, not the mother and father, and not just the mother.
Okay, so get this quote, because they almost agree, but then they have an ideology and an agenda that stops them. So Ross Douthat asks Sargeant, like, are there workplaces where it's difficult to be a woman and be successful in these workplaces? Which is like, I mean, as we just presented, most workplaces are difficult to be a human and be at. And Ross even notes that, New York Times has a great leave package, but Ross couldn't take it because he's like, I'm going to lose my competitive edge if I get to be home with my child. And he goes, are there professions that you look at and you're like, honestly, I wouldn't want this profession to be required to have, like, a high degree of maternity leave because it would cut into the competitive edge. And she says, it's not competitiveness that I see as the main hindrance. Here's where I would tell someone not to work if they want a family, which I think is doing good work, but in a method that isn't compatible with family life and isn't plausibly going to become compatible. SpaceX. SpaceX.
Because Elon Musk will sexually harass his wife? Is that why?
SpaceX, which I admire a lot, which iterates very quickly and for the whole beginning of its company had such a tight runway that each individual rocket meant possibly the end of the company. There are some things that you can take on where your responsibilities are so total that they don't leave you room to say yes to someone or something else. Monastic life is also like this, but there are fewer massive explosions, hopefully. Cute. That is a cute joke.
Washington loved that. She's cracking up like crazy at that.
Andrews?
Yeah.
But I think you are rare. These are rare. And I think there's a tendency for employers to see what a company like SpaceX can ask and think, well, I'd like to ask that much of my employee's life too, which I also agree with, without actually having a business model that depends on it, without doing anything nearly as ambitious as they are. So she makes this, like, plug for SpaceX, which is
strange. I mean,
Strange.
it shows to me like this conflation of like profit seeking organizations and like the pursuit of like human enterprise, and they can't imagine like human enterprise outside of the market.
Right.
So for them, they're the same thing. Like SpaceX exists to make money for the stockholders.
Right.
There's nothing about that, period, the end, that warrants total devotion from anyone involved.
Yeah.
It is simply there to make money for stock investors.
She even slips into it herself. She's like, oh, there's SpaceX, which apparently she holds to be more important than other enterprises, which is weird. Like, you could have picked like life-saving drugs, but whatever.
No, because
and then she goes, and then other employers are also going to want that level of devotion, and it's like, it's because it's all the same. They're all doing the same project. The project is profit making.
right, yeah, and the constraint on SpaceX, which doesn't exist for pharmaceuticals, is from the investors. It's not from the nature of the work that they're doing. It's because they don't have enough runway.
Right.
Pharmaceuticals can afford to fuck around because they have plenty of stable capital.
Right.
That they can have maternity and paternity leave. Right. So again, like in contrast, I can imagine. You don't like this?
Well,
I can imagine human enterprises, which do take full concentration of the people involved, deserve to take the full concentration of the people involved, and shouldn't be done by people whose primary interest is in raising a family or like, other things, such as beating the Nazis, although I don't know if Andrews would agree with that, such as fighting climate change, such as finding a cure for a global pandemic, for example.
But you do not get the most out of somebody by disconnecting them from family and social life and zapping them dry. So even in the cases where you need to have human capital, human labor that can be highly dedicated and go through a period of time, a project period of time where they're giving everything, like the Manhattan Project.
Yeah.
You still do not want them to be like unmoored, unattached, and not connected, because those people go fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And everyone has known that workers that are unmoored like that are difficult to manage. So you actually still need like
they're not productive.
Scaffolding around them for it to be positive.
True. And thank God that there are women involved in the fight against Nazism, because those Russian women soldiers, had they been precluded from being warriors, would have meant that the Soviet Union lost.
Also notably, when the Manhattan Project had people go out into the desert to be scientists and engineers, they went with their families, and they created a community that allowed that little connection to remain, because humans are social animals.
Yeah, a community perfect example. This is a community that absolutely has to produce. There is no other option. We're in a fight for our survival. And they built a community not which relegated women to second-class status and forced them to stay within the home and atomized individual households so that the men could do all the work, single-mindedly do all the work, but created a community which allowed for collective management of childbearing, education, food, everything else, so that many of the members in it, including women, could devote most of their attention to something but still be renewed, still have other kinds of tasks, other hobbies, other pursuits, other relationships.
Yep.
Right. And this is a truth. Like, there isn't no fucking around. Like, you're winning, you're figuring out the bomb, or you're not figuring out the bomb, and that's a life or death struggle.
Yep.
Right.
So just because this is my hobby of watching these guys almost get to the point and then walk away from it, I'm going to read one more part. So Ross responds to the SpaceX things, and he goes, well, I don't think it's just SpaceX. I think there's lots of zones in American life, from the tool factory and car dealership all the way up to Elon Musk's landscape, where there's a certain kind of ruthless competitiveness that is important to the truth-seeking that is the work of capitalism. So, like, because we're talking about truth-seeking here, not the work of capitalism. No, they're all the same. Truth-seeking is now the work of capitalism, everyone.
So just imagine douche hat. He's home for paternity leave, And he's making this argument to his wife. Look, I can't sit here and change diapers with you. I'm not going to be as competitive as the other op-ed writers. I can't be helping you with this. I can't be staying up all night with you. I have to be out there so I can keep up with the cutting edge of New York Times columns.
Op-ed writers, the ultimate and the truth seeking of capitalism.
It's like, all right, buddy, we get it. Yeah, you don't want to do the poo-poo diapers too.
And that maybe there is some room for being more solicitous of female difference and dependency in the workforce. But if you go too far, you're just losing that edge. You can't segment it off and say, if you work for Elon Musk, you don't get maternity leave, but everywhere else you do. There's a larger culture here that is endangered by making the workplace bend more to dependence. And she goes, I think part of it is that in any kind of work, in any kind of truth-seeking work, you have to, I love how they just put truth-seeking in anywhere. It means different things to everybody.
That was the fiction-seeking work.
You have to be realistic about the materials you work with. SpaceX is deeply rooted in the truth about its materials. It cares a lot about exactly what the steel can take, what will happen to a particular kind of heat shield, I guess.
Which women can't possibly care about.
Well,
too busy backbiting.
But I think many employers and workplaces are not interested in the reality of the materials of the human beings. And there's something unjust about building a system that chews people up and then tosses them out on the scrap heap, or chews up their fertile years, promising them egg freezing and ignoring the fact that that tends not to pan out by the time it happens. They won't be working there anymore. It'll be their problem, not yours. So what does it mean as a steward of your employees? It means being realistic that people are fragile. They have other people who depend on them. They themselves can get sick, injured, pregnant, and a responsive workforce will always have ways of responding injustice to that, which doesn't make sense.
This is her Catholic sensibility, prioritizing like godliness.
Right.
Devotion to God.
What she's pointing out is that you have a literal material problem that capitalism does not have a solution for, which is human frailty.
Mm-hmm.
And Ross is pointing it out too. You can't, the competitiveness of capitalism does not have it's SpaceX or the New York Times. Like, we're all in the same rat race and they can't get to it. And then Helen agrees. Helen agrees. We're all in agreement, and they can't. They don't end up anywhere with this line of thinking.
Yeah, Sargeant's point here is that the women are not uniquely dependent, and that women are not uniquely needing like this fiction that he imagines of men who have single-mindedly devoted to their careers is the best way to like push forward like the human species.
Right, and she points out to Ross Douthat by saying, you also will die. Basically, you're a human and you will die.
Yeah.
And so this condition is not.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but you're never going to be like, you imagine yourself as an immortal, like warrior.
New York Times op-ed writer.
Which is, but the poor guy can't be a Nordic soldier who will live forever. So he has to be a op-ed writer, right? But this competition that would push the species to the brink, she's saying this is a fiction because you're just as much flesh and blood as I am. And yeah, I give birth to kids, but every body is finite and everybody needs to be cared for in ways that deprioritize the market.
Right.
And she's right about
and she's right about that.
Yeah, she's right about that. And I don't think he agrees. I think his point is like, I've been robbed. This idea that I have to take care of my children too by having the same paternity leave as women, which is like we're supposed to believe that this is a gift that capitalist society has bestowed on workers. Now, first of all, most workers don't get maternity leave, much less paternity leave.
Right.
So it's not a gift bestowed on workers. What it is a benefit that can be commanded by a certain segment of like the like white collar class, the professional middle class. It's something you command as compensation for the work you do. It's not a gift. And it's a compensation that people, like, you're not there working to, like, push human species forward. You're there understanding that someone else is benefiting from your work. And if they're going to benefit from your work, you want to be compensated for it. That's what it's there for. The other thing it's there for is for the benefit of your children, Doug fuck. It's there to help you take the time to attach to your children, to get to know them, to help your wife take care of them,
and
so that they grow up.
Help her take care of herself.
Correct.
Because her body just gave birth.
Yeah, that's what it's allowing you to do work that's just as important. Right. But like he can't see that because women's work is not work. Women's work is invisible. It doesn't push forward this imagined human project of, I don't know, beating the Chinese, I guess, at making things, making cheap shit that you buy on Amazon or whatever it is. So he can't fathom that stuff as being important. And this portrays that the women's work is not important. Women's work should happen in the background, should be unpaid, because it's not as important as this really important thing I do, which is put word salad on a page for the sake of the ruling class.
I mean, he has a hard time grasping it, probably because he's a man. She grasps it because she knows fully understands the amount, the caretaking and like homeostasis making work of women. And she believes that women should do that, are predetermined to do that and need to do that. She also does seem to understand it is required work to make the machine work. And I think when he's presented with it, he understands it is required work to make the machine work, but can only
then see that as a way to further facilitate capital. Yeah.
And the solutions for these problems get stuck at a basic identitarian space where it's like, we'll have women do this and men do this, which isn't even how it's happening. Like, it's literally economically not how it works. If you expel women from the workplace to only be caretakers, the economy would fall apart. But like they've got such a limited set of tools to analyze the problem, and an absolute allergy to talking about actual class.
Yes. And a lack of imagination about how human beings can accomplish important things outside of using capitalism as like a whip.
Yes. Even though they got examples. There's mainstream examples. There's mainstream examples in modern capitalism. What happens during a wartime effort? It's not all projects of capitalism that advances it.
Each soldier applies with their resume. This is why you should pay me more than them, right? And then they go to battle and they compete to see which division is better, right? You sabotage the opposing divisions, right? Or no, you're saying they cooperate? That's how war is fought, is through cooperation and not competition?
That's kind of feminized. I don't know what wars you're studying, but that feels revisionist and matriarchal.
Yeah, everyone in the platoon is actually competing with one another. They actually shoot each other in the back so that they can come in on top of it. Yeah. That's how you win a war.
Okay, well, that's all I've really got. And we have I wonder how much of this is useful because we have a baby chirping in the background.
Yeah, no, it's all going to be useful. Thank you so much for joining the podcast.
You can call her E.
E, thank you, E, for joining the podcast. Very, very important contributions, I thought.
She says that if you're talking about feminism, I'm going to wake up.
I have to be involved. I have important contributions to make to this conversation about feminism. Just please don't be a conservative feminist, whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah, I bet you if you were a conservative feminist, you'd be more of a Leah than a Helen. Helen's an idiot.
Ellen comes off so breathtakingly badly in this. She can't even understand the critiques being leveled at her, and she's so nasty in response. She affects what I think she thinks is like a masculine directness in response to criticism, but it just maybe it's because women just can't be direct without coming off a certain way. But
that's the thing is she doesn't have a grasp of her own argument, so she's not being direct.
Yeah.
So it's not that she's a woman that she's coming off badly.
Yeah.
By being direct. She's actually not being direct, and she's extremely defensive and nasty. And I don't know.
Helen, we're still waiting to hear some women virtues. You still haven't said a single one. Can you say one?
She refused to tell us any virtues of the women. And
she hates women. She hates women. She comes across as someone who was bullied in high school and attributed being bullied as the inherent nature of other women.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know if that's true or not. That's the vibe.
I think that your other podcast project will be psychoanalyzing the op-ed contributors, but this
West Side Project.
This one can't be it.
Okay. Well,
I feel bad for you, Helen. Not that bad though.
Keep on keeping on.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Subscribe.
Oh, yes. Please subscribe to the Substack. Don't just listen.
Now you've gotten to minute 79. We'd ask you to subscribe.
Yeah, you wish.
Bye.
Bye.
As you grow old, your powers will fade. As you grow old, you're on the make, and you don't do regret. You're always out or what you can get. You think like a snake, and you ooze like a snail. Let the trail go cold as you swallow your tail. With your low rent skills and your heart of flint, telling your tales that are unfit to print. You're all weasel words, backed up by the boots, obsessed like the rest, with a promise of loot. Your pies will fade as you grow old. 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 You demand of the sea, it obey your commands. You grab at the land with both of your hands. But candles will burn, and time will reveal all that you've done and the money you steal. The suffering you're causing gives you no pause for thought. You've got your claws in the dead summer's heart. Birds will return, as the birds always do. When they come home to roost, they'll feast on you. Your pies will fade as you grow old. Your pies will fade as you grow